What happens when academics challenge public opinion? In 1899, George Arnold Wood, the Challis Professor of History at the University of Sydney, denounced the Boer War as morally wrong, which led to calls for his dismissal. Behind closed doors, the Senate debated the case of G.A. Wood and his right to free speech. Wood's view of history was progressive, optimistic and grand. He shunned antiquarianism for historical imagination in order to explore what he called noble ideas in the history of humanity: democracy, justice and liberty. In Wood's lectures, a former student explained, we quickly learnt that he dealt not with history as a subject itself, but with life viewed historically. In 1899, the Australian colonies sent contingents to South Africa to help Britain defeat the Boer republics. The war grew out of resistance to what the Boers saw as unjustified British claims on their lands and a weakening of political rights. Wood argued that Britain's support of gold company speculators, the pirate empire Wood dubbed them, undermined British principles of justice. An unjust war, though it may be successful, he wrote, cannot fail to bring disaster to the empire. In the latter stages of the war, correspondents wrote about the scorched earth policy of the British Army, a war tactic to destroy Boer sustenance by burning down homesteads and farms, poisoning wells, killing livestock and destroying fields. Then in 1901, the English social activist Emily Hobhouse revealed the horrors of British concentration camps. These camps had been established to house Boers and Africans, mainly women and children made homeless by the war. But through neglect, poor hygiene and punishing half rations, death rates were astronomical, especially amongst children. Wood helped establish the Australian Anti-War League to petition the British Parliament to end the war, and wrote carefully argued newspaper articles about why the war was immoral. Public outrage followed, largely fuelled by media hysteria, with many in the community calling the professor a traitor and baying for his blood. Under mounting public pressure, the University Senate censured him for his anti-war views, which they said were unworthy of a professor of history. The atmosphere was tense, and Wood believed he might be dismissed. To defend himself, he wrote a 15-page letter, which I have here. He says, "It seems to me that one of the most valuable services a professor can render is by the expression of views that are highly unpopular." Historians have speculated that backroom manoeuvring by the Chancellor, perhaps in a Senate room like this, deferred a decision about Wood's continuing employment and so saved his tenure. But the result was a principle far more enduring: a new public campaign in defence of liberty of speech and calls for the protection of academics who spoke out in opposition. We shall leave the final words to Edmund Barton, Australia's first Prime Minister. While I positively detest Mr. Wood's opinions on this question, I do not think the holding of them argues that he is disloyal. Has he not also the right of free speech on his side of the controversy?